me on a 15-minute trip to the Bahamas. I'm seeing some heads down here. So later in that year, a guy named Gus Grissom went on a very similar flight. But in the meantime, May 25th, 1961, 3 days after Alan Shepard's flight. Now remember, though, that day in history, we had one guy in space at a country for 15 minutes and hadn't even orbited the Earth one time yet. And President John Kennedy gets before a joint session of Congress and says, we're going to the moon, and everybody at NASA goes, yay! By the end of the decade, before 1970, and everybody at NASA goes, what? So we had to speed things up a little. So our third astronaut, instead of flying on a Redstone, flew on our first intercontinental ballistic missile called an Atlas, and that's the only model in the rocket garden. If you look to the left of the Redstone, you'll see a silvery rocket with 109D on it and a black capsule. That represents John Glenn's Mercury Atlas, launched February of 1962. He orbited the Earth 3 times, came back to ticker tape parades, ultimately Congress, flew on a shuttle mission, and there were 3 additional Mercury orbital missions. And we learned a lot in the Mercury program. We learned your eyes wouldn't pop out of your head. We learned your blood wouldn't boil. John Glenn actually proved you could eat in space. He was the first American to eat in space, a little squeezed tube of applesauce. But if we were going to go to the moon by 1970, we needed to learn a whole lot more. We needed to learn how to spend time in space. The longest a Mercury astronaut had spent in space was about a day and a half. Folks, it takes 3 days just to get to the moon. Almost 3 days coming back, a couple of days walking around on the surface. We didn't even know if somebody could survive for 8 days in space. We needed to be able to rendezvous and dock with another spacecraft. We needed to be able to get out of the spacecraft in a spacesuit and do meaningful work. It's called spacewalking. In short, we needed a bridge program between the Mercury program and the Apollo program, and that bridge program was called Gemini. If you look in the direction of Atlantis beyond those palm trees, you'll see a horizontal model, a two-person Gemini spacecraft where we have astronauts aboard, always had 2 astronauts on it, and we have a flown one on the first floor of Heroes and Legends. Always launched on these Titan II intercontinental ballistic missiles, these silvery white and black rockets. And we learned a lot in Gemini also. Gemini 4, Ed White became our first American spacewalker. Gemini 5 spent 8 days in space, maybe we could survive that. Gemini 6 and 7 actually rendezvoused with one another so closely they could wave at each other through the windows. Now Gemini 7 did something else.